On my Themani Aisha's birthday, my cousin Blake got a Rolls Royce, I got a garbage bag, and the front gate. That was not a metaphor. I wish it was metaphors. At least have the decency to sound expensive. Car sat in the Hawthorne Mansion driveway under the warm gold lights, black paint shining like it had never heard of rain, dust, or consequences. Blake leaned against the hood with one hand in his designer pocket and the other holding his phone, recording my face like my eviction was a birthday vlog. "Smile, Landon," he said. "You're finally leaving the basement. Big day for everyone." Himmayat Victoria stood on the front steps in a pearl white coat. Her posture was perfect. Her expression was soft enough for charity photos and cold enough to freeze drinking water. My uncle Marcus stood beside her, checking his watch like kicking the out was making him late for something more important. Maybe polishing the empire he stole from my dead parents. Victoria looked at the black garbage bag in my hand inside. "Do not make this dramatic," she said. "You are Themania Asher now." Cracked photo frame I had hidden behind a wine rack in the basement. That was my inheritance, apparently. Marcus stepped closer and lowered his voice, but not enough. Staff still stood by the door. Security still watched from the gate. Blake's phone still pointed at me. "You leeched off this family long enough," Marcus said. "We fed you. We gave you shelter. Do not come back here pretending we..." Or shelter. That was what they called the basement wine cellar. A cold room with stone floors, no window, and the constant smell of dust, cork, and rich people pretending fermented graves were a personality. I had slept there from Arba Asher to Themania Asher, 4 years under their house. Close enough to hear parties upstairs, and far enough that nobody had to pretend. I could have shouted. I could have said, my father built Sterling Atlas before Marcus ever learned how to fake a boardroom smile. I could have said my mother's shares were supposed to go to me, not Victoria's handbag collection and Blake's birthday cars. But I had said those things. At Arba Asher, I screamed until my throat hurt. Khamsat Asher. I begged them to show me the will. At Sittat Asher, I asked why my parents' lawyers stopped calling. At Sebat Asher, I learned that people with stolen money do not get scared when a powerless kid tells the truth. They just close the basement door. So, on my Themani Asher's birthday, I said nothing. Blake laughed anyway. "Look at him," he said, turning the camera slightly, still acting like someone stole his kingdom. "Bro, if your parents wanted you rich, maybe they should have driven better." Fingers tightened around the garbage bag handle. For a second, the driveway disappeared. I saw my father's study instead, warm wooden shelves, my mother's hand on my shoulder. I was around Thalatha Asher, maybe a little younger, sitting at a table with a birthday cake in front of me and a toy Rolls Royce in my hands. It was silver about the size of my palm, and my father made a ridiculous show of handing me the keys. "When you turn Themania Asher," he told me, smiling like the world was kind, "we will get you the bigger version." My mother kissed my forehead and said, "Gee, not too big? I still want him." My father laughed. I laughed, too. Back then, I thought promises made by people who loved you were permanent. Then the memory broke. The driveway came back. Blake's phone, Victoria's cold face, Marcus's watch, the garbage bag twisting in my fist. My mother was dead. My father was dead. Their empire was in the hands of the people who had turned me into a servant. And the only car waiting for my Themania Asher's birthday was parked behind the cousin who had been wearing my life like a stolen jacket. Victoria flicked her eyes toward security. "Open the gate," she said. The guard hesitated for half a second. That half second was the closest thing to sympathy I got that night. Mark has noticed and snapped his fingers. Now. Iron gate grown open. I walked through it with the garbage bag over my shoulder. Blake followed just far enough to keep filming. "Happy birthday, basement boy," he called. The gate closed behind me. I stood on the sidewalk and waited for something inside me to break loudly. It did not. It just folded quietly like a paper cup under someone's shoe. Walked. I sat down beside it, pulled my garbage bag against my chest, and looked up at the strip of sky between the buildings. "Great work," I muttered. "Richest orphan in America, sleeping beside yesterday's seafood." Voice cracked on the last word. That annoyed me more than the cold. I pressed the heel of my hand into my eyes and tried not to make a sound. The alley was empty. Nobody was watching. Somehow that made it worse. Humiliation in public is sharp. Humiliation alone is heavy. I thought about my parents. I thought about the toy car. I thought about the will I never got to see. I thought about Something lit up in front of me. At first I thought it was a phone screen. Then I realized my phone was still dead in my bag. A black rectangle floated in the air, glowing with thin silver letters. "Amitane's Bank. Invitation available. Do you accept?" I stared at it for a long second, then I looked around the alley. No cameras, no prank crew, no drunk tech bro laughing behind the dumpster. August, me the cold, and a floating message that should not exist. Thus swallowed. Either I'm freezing to death, I said, or the universe has a very weird customer service department. The words accept and decline appeared under the message. This Lon shaking hand. Maybe I was desperate, maybe I was stupid. ABA boy with nothing left can afford to click strange glowing things in alleys. I pressed accept. The air split with a soft metallic sound. A black card dropped into my palm. It was heavier than it looked, smooth, cold with silver edges and one. For the first time that night, I stopped feeling cold. The floating message changed. First transaction available, spend, receive double. He stared at the card until my fingers hurt from gripping it. Then I laughed once low and ugly. Victoria gave me a garbage bag. Something else gave me a bank. And for the first time since my parents died, I had a question worth staying alive for. What could a homeless heir buy if every dollar came back with a twa? My first transaction with Limitless Bank was not a supercar, a penthouse, or some dramatic billionaire entrance. It was a gas station sandwich wrapped in plastic and emotional. God damage. The cashier looked at me like I might steal the napkins. Fair enough. I looked like a guy who had lost a fight with a laundry basket and a dumpster. My hoodie was wrinkled, my hair was a mess, and I was holding a black card that probably cost more than the sandwich display. Card, I said. He glanced at the black card, then at me. That look said nice prop, buddy. I could not even blame him. If a homeless-looking kid handed me a luxury black card at 1 in the morning, I would assume he either stole it or escaped from a very stylish. HCLT. The card reader beeped, approved. The cashier blinked. I blinked too. A message appeared in the corner of my vision. Transaction, ثمانية اثنان وأربعون. Limitless bank return. 16 84. Available balance updated. I stepped outside with the sandwich in one hand and the card in the other. The city was still cold. My life was still a disaster. But 16 84 sat inside an account that had not existed 10 minutes ago. I took one bite of the sandwich. It tasted like bread, salt, and a lawsuit against vegetables. I almost cried anyway. Not because it was good, because it was mine. I bought water next, then a cheap charger, then a prepaid phone from behind the counter. Every swipe returned double, small numbers, pathetic numbers. But they moved up instead of down, and after 4 years of watching everything that belonged to me move into someone else's hands, by sunrise, I had enough for a motel room. The place had old carpet, tired wallpaper, and a front desk clerk who did not ask questions as long as the card clear. I liked him immediately. A man with standards that low was exactly what I needed. I paid for one night, the system doubled it back. I stood in the tiny bathroom with steam covering the mirror and watched dirt run off my hands into the sink. My fingers shook when I unzipped the garbage bag and pulled out the cracked photo frame. My parents smiled behind the glass. My father in a navy suit, my mother in a white dress, and me between them around Thalatharasher, holding that toy Rolls Royce like it was treasure. I put the frame on the counter, then I noticed the vase on the little shelf near the door. It was cheap, blue ceramic, probably worth $asharun and one sad compliment. Still, my chest tightened. A vase was how Blake learned he could make my pain funny. I was Arba'acharsher then. A few months after the accident, the Hawthorne had already moved me into the basement, though they called it temporary. Temporary became Arba'a. That afternoon, Victoria had hosted a lunch for donors. I was in the kitchen washing plates because Marcus said I needed to learn discipline. Blake came in with frosting on his sleeve and poured him on his face. He was Thalathashar, soft-cheeked, smug, and already convinced the world existed to carry him from one expensive room to another. "Basement boy," he said, "bring me soda." It did not move fast enough, so he picked up Victoria's imported vase from the hallway table. "Hey," I warned him, "put that down." He smiled, then he dropped it. The vase shattered across the marble floor. For 1 second, we both looked at the pieces. Then Blake screamed, and Victoria, Landon broke it. I stared at him. He stared back at me. Then he smiled again, small and private, because he already knew who would be believed. Victoria came rushing in with Marcus behind her. Staff gathered at the kitchen door. Blake pointed at me with fake trembling fingers. "He got mad because I asked for a drink," Blake said. Then he smashed it. "That's not true," I said. Victoria slapped me before I finished the sentence. Victoria slapped me before I finished the sentence. The sound cracked through the hallway. My cheek burned, my eyes watered. Not because it hurt that badly, though it did. Because Blake laughed behind her shoulder, silent and shaking while everyone else looked away. Victoria grabbed my chin. He went destructive, she whispered. Your parents spoiled you and now we have to fix the mess they left. Marcus looked at the broken pieces inside. Take it out of his allowance. I had no allowance. That was the joke. They made me clean the glass with my bare hands while Blake ate dessert at the dining. A staff member tried to give me gloves, but Victoria saw and shook her head. He should learn, she said. I learned that truth without power is just noise. Standing in the motel bathroom 4 years later, I touched my cheek. The skin was fine, the memory was not. The cheap blue vase on the shelf looked harmless. It had nothing to do with Victoria, nothing to do with Blake. I still wanted to smash it. Instead, I sat on the bed, opened the prepaid phone, and checked the limitless bank balance. It was not much. Enough for a few days of food if I was careful. Enough for a second. Enough to feel like the edge of a knife, not the knife itself. I bought clothes at a discount store. Socks, underwear, 2 plain shirts, a jacket that did not smell like basement stones. The card cleared, the money doubled. I bought a small notebook and a pen. The money doubled again. At first, I wrote down every transaction, like the system might vanish if I stopped watching. Vinmainden became sitte asher. Arbaon became themenun. Themenun became mi'et wisittun. It was not magic fireworks. It was slow, stupid, beautiful math. By the end of the second day, I could afford a week at the motel. By the third, I bought an old laptop from a pawn shop. By the fourth, I paid for public records access. That was when I typed Sterling Atlas Holdings into the search bar. My father's company logo filled the screen. Then Victoria's name appeared under Executive Chair. Marcus Hawthorne appeared under Chief Executive Officer. Blake was listed on the company charity page, smiling in a black suit with a silver watch on his wrist. There I was in a motel room with vending machine dinner on the nightstand, looking at the empire my parents built and my aunt's stall. My hands went still on the keyboard. For 4 years, the Hawthorns made me feel like a broken plate. They were kind enough to keep in the basement. But the system had given me something they never expected, a way to turn every purchase into a step. I opened my notebook again. At the top of the first clean page. I wrote 3 words. Take it back then. Under that, I wrote the first names on the list. Victoria Marcus Blake. The pen left a small tear in the paper. Good. Something should leave. I did not return to the Hawthorne mansion the next morning. That would have been satisfying for about 12 seconds. Then Marcus would have had security toss me back onto the sidewalk. Victoria would have called me unstable, and Blake would have posted a video titled something stupid, like Basement Boy Returns. I had a black card, not a brain injury. So I disappeared. The first month was ugly. Limitless Bank doubled what I spent, but I learned the rhythm quickly. Buy what I needed. Wait for the return. Spend a G. Never flash too much. Never ask questions in places where poor people asking questions made rich people curious. Food became motel nights. Motel nights became a small rented room above a closed bakery. The room smelled like old sugar and wet brick. The heater knocked like it wanted attention. The window looked directly at another brick wall, which was depressing but private. Privacy mattered more than scenery. I bought a second-hand desk. The money doubled. I bought a laptop that did not wheeze when I opened 2 tabs. The money doubled. I bought online courses in finance, corporate law, inheritance law, and accounting. The money doubled. That was when I discovered a cruel truth. Money could double, time could not. I wanted revenge immediately. I wanted to walk into Sterling Atlas with a stack of papers and make Victoria's perfect smile fall off her face. But every public filing had gaps just large enough for rich thieves to hide. I was Thamani Cotters, angry, undertrained, and legally inconvenient. If I moved too fast, I would become a headline. Troubled orphan accuses guardians. Bitter nephew attacks family business, unstable heir manipulated by outsiders. Victoria probably had that statement written already. She loved being prepared for other people's suffering. So I studied. I spent money because spending money made money. I bought better tools, better access, better data, better advice. I learned enough to know I needed someone smarter than me. That was how I found Naomi Cross. Her office was on the 5th floor of a narrow building between a tax clinic and a divorce to turn. No marble, no receptionist with a headset, just a frosted glass door and a woman in a black blazer who looked like she could smell fraud through. Concrete. She looked me over once. "You're young," she said. "You are observant," I said. Her mouth twitched. "US." No, and you can pay? I placed the black card on her desk. She did not touch it. Cards can decline, she said. 2. That was cocky. I regretted it immediately. But the payment cleared. Her eyebrows rose, wahid millimeter, which from Naomi felt like a standing ovation. I told her enough to start my parents, Elliot and Grace Sterling. The accident, the adoption, the will I never saw, the company transfer, the basement, the birthday of... Naomi, listen without interrupting. When I finished, she opened a drawer, took out a legal pad, and wrote one sentence at the top. Follow control, not grief. That sounds cold. It is accurate, she said. If they stole from you, they hid the theft and control structures, shares, trusts, proxies, filings, debt, board votes. That is what they used to distract you. I liked her immediately, not warmly. I was not in a warm chapter of my life, but I liked that she did not pat my hand. Naomi had tools over the next 3 years we built quietly. I moved from the room above the bakery into a small apartment with a lock that worked. Then into a better apartment where the neighbors did not yell at pipes. Then into a place with enough space for monitors, file boxes, and the old photo frame of my parent. Limitless Bank grew with me. I bought groceries, returned double, bought a car, returned double. Bought small properties through clean entities, returned double. Bought consulting reports, legal reviews, data access, private investigations, returned W. The system never cheered, it never comforted me, it simply rewarded motion. Every time I spent the balance climbed. Every time the balance climbed, I thought of Victoria telling me adults survived on their own. Fine. I would survive so well she would choke on it. Naomi traced the older state document. Some pages were clean, too clean. She found signatures filed on dates that did not match travel records. She found a trust amendment approved suspiciously close to my parents' accident. She found a shell company that had touched Sterling family assets before Marcus ever officially took control. Nothing was enough to blow the doors open. Everything was enough to keep digging. Meanwhile, the Hawthorns lived loudly. Blake's social media became my least favorite business rep. He posted watches, cars, clubs, ski trips, charity golas, where he smiled beside Victoria, like he personally invented compassion. Every post reminded me that he was spending a life built on my parents' bones. One video showed him taking delivery of a custom Rolls Royce. I watched it 3 times, not because I enjoyed pain, I was not that dramatic, because the date mattered. It was Blake's 18th birthday. Victoria stood beside him, clapping. Marcus handed him a key box. The caption read, "Our prince deserves the world. Our prince." I closed the video and opened my notebook. On the first page, under Take It Back, I wrote a new line. Birthdays matter to them. That was not a business insight. That was petty. Sometimes petty is a compass. By the time I turned Wahid wa Ashrun, my visible life was still modest. That was the point. To the Hawthorns, if they thought of me at all, I was a dead-end orphan who advanced into cheap apartments and bad luck. Behind the walls, the money had become real. The assets were real, the shell entities were real. My quiet stake in Sterling Atlas was small enough not to announce me and large enough to give me a seat if I wanted one. Naomi came to my apartment one rainy evening with a folder under her arm and a look that made me sit up before she spoke. "What?" I asked. "Blake's Wahid wa Ashrun's birthday is next week," she said. "I survived his Thamania Ashrth. I am thrilled. That heir attending the Barrett Motor auction, limited edition Ferrari, only one coming through private sale in the country." He placed the folder on my desk. Inside was a glossy photo of the car. Red, low, obnoxious, exactly Blake's taste. For a moment, I saw the toy Rolls Royce in my 13-year-old hand. Then I saw Blake leaning against his berth. I smiled. Naomi watched me careful. "Landon." "What?" Smile. Usually means I need to ask if we are still doing the smart thing. "You do not need that Ferrari." "No," I said, "but neither does Blake." Next day, one of my clean entities registered for the auction. Not under my name, not under anything connected to me. The Hawthorns were about to meet a bit or nobody could see. And I was about to buy my first birthday present. Blake arrived at the Barrett Motor auction like the Ferrari had already accepted his proposal. You wore a white jacket, no tie, and a watch bright enough to warn aircraft. Victoria walked beside him in pale silk, smiling at guests with that trained softness she used whenever cameras were near. Mark has followed with 2 assistants and the expression of a man who believed prices were suggestions meant for other people. I was not in the room, not physically. A proxy was a gray-haired bidding agent named Mr. Alvarez, sat near the back with a phone, a paddle, and strict instructions. He had no idea why I wanted that car. The watched from a private room 2 blocks away. The live auction feed opened on one screen, Limitless Bank dashboard on another. Naomi on a video call at the corner of my laptop. She looked tired. You know, she said some people celebrate turning wahed or shroon with cake, and buying a cake with wheels. That is not how cake works. It is how my family works. Couching hall glittered with rich boredom. Men in dark suits, women with diamond bracelets, staff moving through rows with tablets. Everyone smiling like they were too expensive to sweat. Then the Ferrari rolled onto the stage. Paint under bright lights. Low body. Black interior. The kind of car designed for men who wanted strangers to hear their insecurity before they arrived. Blake leaned forward in his seat. Victoria touched his arm. Marcus gave a small nod to their bidding representative. The auctioneer started with a number that would have bought the motel I once slept in, mia times over. First beads came quickly. Marcus raised. Arcus raised again. Blake grinned like a kid, watching someone else load his play. Then Mr. Alva has lifted my paddle. The auctioneer pointed. Bid from number mia was sabat asher. Glanced back. He could not see me. He saw an older man with a calm face and no visible emotion. He raised again. I told Mr. Alvarez to go higher. The auctioneer's voice sharpened. The room shifted. Heads turned first casually, then with interest. Nobody cared when rich men spend money. Nan cared when one rich man was denied something in public. Blake stopped smiling. Marcus raised again, harder this time, his hand cutting through the yiddinger. I raised back. Naomi sighed through the laptop. This is a terrible investment. That is not an investment. That makes me feel worse. A birthday card. On the feed, Blake whispered something to Victoria. She smiled and patted his hand, but her eyes had tightened. That was the first visible crack. Ghislaine's tort is representative. Another bid. Responded before the auctioneer finished repeating the fee. You guessed, laughed softly, not at Marcus. Not yet at the situation. Was how public humiliation starts in expensive rooms, quiet, polite, everyone pretending not to enjoy it. Arcus looked toward the back again. This time his jaw moved. Blake's face reddened. Who is that? I saw him mouth. Nobody answered. The price climbed high enough that 2 serious collectors dropped out. Then it climbed into the territory where the car stopped being a car and became a very shiny argument. Marcus made one final bid. As ugly, not financially ruinous, but emotionally expensive. He had pushed too far to protect Blake's birthday fantasy. Looked at the screen, then I raised by wahed million. Naomi closed her eyes. Petty, she said. Accurate, I corrected. Room went quiet. The auctioneer repeated the number. Marcus did not move. Victoria's smile held, but only because she had probably trained it in front of mirrors for situations exactly like this. Blake turns toward Marcus with disbelief on his face. The prince had been promised a tall. The toy had just been taken away. Going once, Blake sat forward, going twice. Marcus stared at Mr. Alvarez like he could identify the buyer through hatred alone. Build to number mita was sabatash. Emmer came down. Blake stood too fast. His chair scraped loudly against the polished floor. Several people turned. Someone lifted a phone. Dad, Blake snapped. Not loud enough for the whole room, but loud enough for the row behind them. You said it was handled. Marcus grabbed his wreath. Sit down. I wanted that car. Victoria leaned toward Blake with a soft warning smile. Not here. That made it worse. Blake had never been good at not here. His whole life was here in front of people being handed things. Across the room, Serena Vale watched with her chin resting on her hand. Dot knew of Serena. Everyone in the business press knew of Serena. Her family owned a media network, several digital publications, and enough social influence to make scandals grow teeth. She was young, elegant, and famous for asking questions that made executive. Upon the feed, her eyes moved from Blake to Mr. Alvarez, then to the paddle number, then back to Victoria. She noticed pattern before most people noticed smoke. Good, I needed witnesses eventually, but not yet. One person in that room knew it was me. Victoria and Marcus saw only a mysterious bidder. Blake saw only a stolen toy. Serena saw a question. I saw the first birthday backfire. Limitless Bank processed the payment through the entity. The return hit my hidden account like thunder without sound. The money doubled. The insult did too. When the live feed ended, Naomi leaned closer to her camera. You look pleased. I am being mature. You bought a Ferrari. You do not need just to ruin a birthday. Exactly. Said Growth. She did not laugh, but her mouth twitched again. Later that night, Blake posted nothing. That was how I knew it hurt. No photo, no fake smile, no caption about blessings. Just silence. For a man like Blake, silence was basically a funeral. The next more. Serena Vale requested ownership information on the bidder entity. I read it twice, then I smiled. Dot up because Serena knew she did not. But someone smart had noticed the shadow. And shadows were useful as long as the people staring at them never turned around. The Hawthorns called the Ferrari auction bad luck. That was rich, considering their entire fortune depended on my bad luck lasting forever. Blake recovered the way spoiled people recover from public embarrassment. He bought a new watch, posted a gym photo with a caption about haters, and pretended losing a limited Ferrari in front of half the city's elite was a spiritual scoringshirpadik lesson. Marcus recovered by getting angry at staff. Victoria recovered by smiling hard. Then came the waterfront development. Sterling Atlas announced the project with glossy renderings, polished speeches, and Victoria standing in front of a model that looked like a rich person's dream of nature after. All the actual nature had been removed. Resort, private villas, luxury retail, a marina, wellness spa. Wyatt walking paths for people who wanted to feel humble between champagne delivery. The problem was the land, a small parcel sat inside the planned development zone, not huge, not flashy, but necessary. Without it, the whole model looked like someone had taken a bite out of the center. Naomi found it first. Uran has been boasting before the purchase closed, she said during our morning call. Bold, careless, my favorite kind of bull. The land belonged to a family trust that wanted a clean sale. Victoria and Marcus assumed Sterling Atlas would get it. They had already invited investors to a private lunch. They had already prepared renderings. Marcus had even made calls to city contacts, which Naomi described as aggressively friendly. Pressure meant opportunity. I bought the neighboring parcel first through one entity, then used another to bid for the critical piece. The price climbed quickly. Marcus tried to push through a private arrangement. Victoria made a personal call. City consultant hinted that the seller should consider Sterling Atlas for the public good. The seller considered the cash. Limitless Bank processed the payment. The return doubled back through the system. My account swelled while Marcus's development team probably lost the ability to blink. That afternoon, Sterling Atlas held the investor presentation anyway. I watched the recording later. Victoria stood beside the glossy waterfront model in a cream suit. Marcus stood near the screen. Blake attended because someone had clearly told him standing near a model counted as business experience. Victoria began beautifully. She spoke about legacy, community, sustainable luxury, and other phrases that sound expensive because nobody in the room asks what they... Then an investor raised his hand. Has the interior parts? Secured. Victoria smiled at not move. Marcus stepped forward. We are handling final details. That meant. A second investor leaned over the model and pointed at the missing piece. If that parcel is held by a third-party, access routes change. Construction staging changes. The smiled like the man had insulted his shoes. We have been developing properties for decades. We are not concerned. Who is concerned I could tell, because he used the voice-rich menus when they want everyone to stop noticing the fire. Victoria placed one hand on the model. The project remains fully on schedule. That was the moment she overcommitted. The investor nodded slowly, not convinced. Just polite enough to wait until he was outside before calling someone else. The room began to whisper. Serena Vale was there too, near the back holding a glass of water and watching. Her gaze moved to the missing parcel, then to Marcus. Then to Victoria's hand, still resting on the model, like she could cover the problem with manicured fingers. She knew the Ferrari bidder and the land buyer were likely connected. She did not know it was me. Good. The Hawthorns did not know either. Better. By evening, small industry blogs picked up the story. Sterling Atlas waterfront project faces parcel complication. Investors ask about acquisition uncertain. Anonymous buyer. I like the sound of that. The next morning, Blake posted a photo from the family gym with the caption, "People who hide their names are coward." I almost commented, "People who hide behind stolen companies should stretch before judging cowards." I did not. Restraint is character development, annoying, but useful. The land deal gave me my second win, but it also gave me my first real headache. Owning land is not like owning a watch. You cannot put it in a drawer and admire you're petting it. There were taxes, maintenance, zoning questions, legal notices, and possible environmental reviews. Naomi sent me a folder thick enough to stop a door. Congratulations, she said. Your revenge has paperwork. I hate that sentence, you should. Paperwork is how rich people bleed slowly. Was right for the first time. I understood that money could buy pressure, but pressure needed management. If I bought recklessly, the assets could rot. If Sterling Atlas collapsed too quickly, I might destroy the very company. That was the drawback of hunting inside a house you plan to live in later. You could not burn every wall. Still, the investor panic did exactly what I needed. Sterling Atlas stock dipped, not much enough. I bought quietly, a little through one entity, a little through a fund. Nobody would connect to a boy once sleeping beside a dumpster. Victoria and Marcus blamed a mystery buyer, a rival fund, maybe someone trying to extort them, maybe a competitor in the luxury resort space. Never me. To them I was gone, maybe dead, maybe sweeping floors somewhere. At most, I was a straight cat who had wandered out of their memory. They did not know the cat had teeth. They definitely did not know it was growing into a tiger. Then Naomi called with the next pressure point. Emergency investor meeting, she said. Sterling Atlas, next week. I looked up from the land documents, public closed, but shareholders can attend with proper credentials. I had avoided stepping inside because I was not ready for what it would do to me. But the time had come. I would not reveal the hidden buyer. I would not show my real hand. I would walk in as something smaller, a nuisance, a little shareholder with a chair. And I wanted to see Victoria's face when the basement opened its door. Sterling Atlas headquarters looked exactly like I remembered, and nothing like I remembered. That is what grief does. It edits buildings without asking permission. The lobby still had the tall glass walls, the white stone floor, and the huge silver logo behind the reception desk. My father used to walk through that lobby with one hand on my shoulder. Employees would stop him every few steps, and he would know their names. Not just executives, security guards, assistants, drivers, people who changed the flowers near the elevators. Marcus walked through the same lobby years later, like everyone was furniture with shoes. I stood outside the revolving doors for almost a full minute before going in. My reflection stared back from the glass. Black suit, clean haircut. My stomach felt like I had swallowed a brick. Get in, I muttered to myself. You bought the right to be nervous indoors. Receptionist looked up when I approached. Can I help? Her tone was polite in the way luxury buildings train people to be polite before deciding if you matter. I handed her my shareholder credentials. Her eyes moved over the tablet, then again. Then her posture changed. One moment, Mr. Sterling, by name, and that lobby hit harder than I expected. The elevator doors opened. A young assistant led me to the investor conference floor. People in suits stood near coffee tables, speaking in low voices. Everyone had the same expression, calm, rich, and worried enough to pretend they were not worried. Then I saw them. Victoria stood near the windows, perfect as ever. Marcus spoke to two board members beside the long table. Blake leaned against the wall with his phone, bored and expensive. For a second, nobody noticed me. Then Blake looked up, his face froze. That was satisfying briefly. Then he smiled. Well, he said loudly enough for nearby investors to hear. The basement has wide, and now several heads turned. Toria followed his gaze. Her face changed by half an inch. Most people would not notice. I noticed. I had spent years studying which version of her smile meant danger. Marcus turned last. He looked at me from shoes to face, then at the assistant. What is he doing here? He assisted and checked the tablet again. Mr. Sterling is registered as a shareholder. Laughed. A shareholder? What did he buy? One coupon and a dream. A few investors gave polite laughs, not real laughs. The kind people use when they want to stay close to power. I felt the old heat rise in my face. 4 years in a basement can make a man very familiar with the taste of being laughed at. I wanted to tell him I had bought the Ferrari he cried of. I wanted to tell Victoria the land she needed was sitting under my control. I wanted to tell Marcus that the mysterious bidder he had been cursing in private reports was standing 3 tables away. I didn't. Good to see you too, Blake. Still confusing volume with importance. The polite laughter changed direction, not much enough. Blake, smile tighten. Marcus stepped forward. This meeting is for serious investors. Place my credential card on the check-in table. Then I should sit down before someone mistakes the room for serious. Older investor coughed into his hand. The assistant looked at her tablet very hard. Victoria walked toward me. Landon, she said softly. This is unexpected. Voice, public place, witnesses nearby. That was the version of Victoria who wanted to look generous while sharpening a knife under the table. I thought you would be happy, I said. You always told people you raised me like family. Her eyes flickered. Marcus's jaw moved. Blake snorted. Family, he said. You slept in the wine cellar because you scared the staff. Was a mistake. The nearest investor turned his head. Victoria's hand tightened around her folder. I looked at Blake and let silence sit there for 1 second too long. Interesting version, I said. I remember the room did not gasp. Real rooms rarely do that outside cheap dramas. But several conversations stopped. A board member near the coffee table lowered his cup. Mark is cut in. We are not discussing family history. No, I said, we are discussing company history. I took a seat near the end of the table. Blake stared like I had sat on his birthday cake. Marcus lived toward security, then remembered the credential card on the table and stopped himself. That small hesitation was beautiful, not loud, not dramatic. Just a man realizing the rules he used to throw me out did not work inside this room. The meeting began. Marcus spoke about market rumors, land delays, speculative interference, and hostile pressure from unknown parties. Unknown parties. That was me wearing a dozen clean masks and one very calm expression. Victoria spoke next. She praised the company's stability. She spoke about legacy and responsibility. Every time she said legacy. When questions opened, I raised my hand. Marcus ignored me. The older investor beside me looked over the young. Shareholder has a question, he said. Marcus had to look at me then. I kept my voice calm. Can management clarify why certain inheritance-linked asset transfers from the Sterling Family Trust were consolidated under Hawthorne-controlled entities after my parents' death? Room went still, not because everyone understood the mechanics, they did not need to. They heard inheritance. They heard Sterling. They saw Victoria's smile free. Marcus answered too quickly. This is not relevant to the current agenda. I nodded. Of course. Stolen history usually hates agendas. Pushed off the wall, you little Victoria touched his arm before he finished. Blake, she said, sweet and sharp. He stopped. Good boy. Sit, stay, inherit stolen things. I did not say that out loud. Growth again. The meeting moved on, but the room had changed. Investors watched Marcus more closely. Employees outside the glass glanced in. Victoria kept her chin high, but her fingers Victoria kept her chin high, but her fingers tapped once against her folder. They still did not suspect me as the mystery bidder. They still thought I was a small problem, a bitter orphan with a few shares and a mouth. A cat with nails. Perfect, because cats can scratch tigers' weight. After the meeting, Blake brushed past me near the elevator. Enjoy your little chair, he muttered. It is the only thing in this building you will ever own. Watched him walk away, then my phone buzzed. Naomi had sent a link. Blake was posting again. A short video from a private jet, a glass in his hand, a flight attendant standing beside him, face stiff. The caption read, "Some people are born to serve." I looked at it for a long moment, then I smiled without humor. Blake had just handed me the next. Blake loved cameras until cameras loved him back for the wrong reason. The private jet video started as a flex. Of course it did. Blake could not take a breath near leather seats without making sure people knew the leather was imported. He sat in a cream-colored seat, sunglasses pushed into his hair. Hand around a glass, the other pointing lazily at a flight attendant who stood in the eye. Smile, he told her. You are on my story. Did not smile. Blake laughed. Come on, do not be shy. People like you should be grateful when people like me make you visible. I watched the clip twice, not because I enjoyed it, because the angle map. A second phone had recorded from behind the cabin partition. Better audio, clearer face, no filters, no rich boy glow. Just Blake, raw and ugly, talking down to a woman who is doing her job. Naomi sent the file with one message. He does half the work himself. I replied, that is his only talent. The flight attendant had not gone public. She was. I understood that people like Blake bill fear into service just smile or lose shifts, stay quiet or lose references, pretend the insult was a joke or get labeled Beck. So, we did it cleanly. Naomi contacted her through a labor return. I funded the attorney through a route that did not point back to. The flight attendant agreed to release the footage anonymously at first, with protection lined up if the clip hit independent accounts before breakfast. By lunch it had spread everywhere. Blake Hawthorne insults flight attendant. Sterling Atlas Air says service workers should be grateful. Luxury brat meltdown on private research. That last headline was not mine. I respected it anyway. Blake tried to respond within 2 hours. That was his second mistake. The first was having a personality. His apology video showed him in a dark sweater, sitting in front of a bookshelf I knew he had never opened. I am sorry if my words were misunderstood. If misunderstood, two of the laziest little cowards in the English language. The comments noticed. So did investors. Sterling Atlas had been selling an image of responsible luxury, community, family values, and leadership. Blake had just put his shoe through the painting. Sponsors connected to the Hawthorne Charity Gala quietly removed his name from upcoming pages. Two brand partners paused social campaigns. A business. The stock dipped, not enough to kill anything. Enough for me. I bought through two quiet entities while Blake's apology got roasted alive online. Limitless Bank rewarded the spending on related services, acquisition costs, and consulting payments. The system did not care whether my money went to food, lawyers, shares, or revenge logistics. It only cared that I spend, return double. Move again. The simplicity was almost rude. At the Sterling Atlas PR room, according to a contact Serena later fed us, Victoria stood in front of a screen replaying Blake's apology. Her face stayed calm. Her hand did not. She clicked the remote too hard and restarted the video 3 times. Again, she said, the PR director shifted in his chair. Mrs. Hawthorne, the problem is not the edit. The problem is the wording. My son was tired, he said. People like her should be grateful. Victoria's smile sharpened. Then make people understand he did not mean. That was Victoria. Never fix the rot, repaint the wall. Marcus wanted to blame the mystery attacker. This was planted, he said. Someone is coordinating pressure after the land deal. He was right. He just had the wrong face in mind. He thought of rival funds, competitors, hostile speculators, maybe Serena's media circle, not me. Never me to Marcus. I was still a bitter orphan who had wandered into one meeting with a tiny share position and an attitude problem. A small cat with nails. He did not know the cat had paid for the camera angle. Serena Vale called me that evening. I almost let it ring out. Then I answered, because curiosity is a disease, and apparently I was infected. Mr. Sterling, she said. Miss Vale? Have an interesting family. That is a polite way to describe a landfill. Pause. Then she laughed when I watched the investor meeting, she said. You asked a question that made Marcus Hawthorne forget how breathing works. You were covered. Shame. Now Blake's private jet scandal appears right after. People behaving badly is not rare. I looked at the monitors in front of me. One showed stock movement, another showed articles. Another showed a quiet buy order completing through an entity with a name that sounded like a boring insurance fund. Are you accusing me of something? I asked. I am deciding whether you are more interesting than you look. I have a face designed for security clearance photos. Her laugh was warmer. Careful, Mr. Sterling. If you keep making dry jokes while the Hawthorns bleed reputation, someone might start thinking you know where the knife is. A hand stopped over the keyboard. Serena was not accusing me directly. Not yet, but she saw lines other people missed. Beautiful, dangerous, both things usually came in the same packaging. I'm just a small shareholder, I said. Of course, she replied, and I'm just a journalist's daughter who likes patterns. Call ended. I sat back and stared at the phone. Naomi messaged a moment later. Serena is circling. I typed back. Let her circle. Just do not let her land. Blake's scandal had worked. The stock dip helped. The public image crack. But the more pressure I created, the more eyes turned toward the shadow. Marcus was about to stop swatting at headlines and start hunting the hand behind them. And when men like Marcus could not find the hand, they usually broke fingers near. Marcus Hawthorne did not know I was the mystery attacker. That made him more dangerous, not less. Man who knows where to swing might miss. Man who does not know starts hitting the walls, the furniture, the witnesses, the doors, and anyone unlucky enough to stand near the noise. Marcus started with the media. Good morning. 3 business sites ran almost identical pieces, blaming hostile speculators for manipulating Sterling Atlas stock after the land complications and Blake. Scandal. The wording was too clean, too matched, too Marcus. An article called Me, a troubled young relative, recently resurfacing around shareholder activity. That was clever. It did not say I was behind anything. It just troubled, recently resurfacing. Rich people love phrases that make abuse sound like weather. Victoria gave a soft interview that afternoon. She wore a pale blue jacket and lowered her eyes at the perfect moments. Landon has been through so much, she said. We have always wanted healing for him. It breaks my heart to see his pain dragged back into public while outside forces attack this company. Forces, that was their story now. The company was under attack by hostile speculators, and poor little Landon, the unstable orphan, was useful background noise. They still did not suspect me. They pitted me in public and insulted me in private. That was almost impressive. Imagine being hunted by a tiger and stopping to kick at a house cat because it annoyed your shoes. I wanted to answer. I wanted to release one clean statement that showed exactly who raised whom, who slept where, and whose signatures sat on forged documents. Naomi stopped me. Not yet, she said. Her voice came. Marcus is fishing. If you defend too precisely, he learns where the real pressure connects. So I just let Victoria play tragic aunt for now. Hate for now, I know. That is why I am saying it slowly.
Right, I hated that too.
Ben Marcus escalated. A legal challenge hit one of the proxy routes connected to a shell entity I had used for early share accumulation. Not my deepest layer, but not disposable either. He challenged filings, demanded disclosures, and pushed for a freeze on pending transfers. At the same time, a witness Naomi had been trying to contact stopped answering. The witness was an old estate clerk from the year my parents died. He had seen enough to be afraid and not enough to feel safe. Naomi had almost convinced him to meet. Then silence. No calls, no replies. Apartment empty when our investigator drove by. My hands went cold when they only told me, "Is he dead?" I asked. "No evidence of that," she said, "but he is gone." That did not make me feel better. The next hit. X-Tit came at Naomi directly. Her office was not glamorous, but it was hers. Aisle shelves, 2 desks, a coffee machine that sounded like it resented employment, a wall calendar with court dates written in black marker. When I arrived that night, the lock had been drilled open. Drawers hung out, papers were scattered across the floor. Her frame license sat face down on the carpet. The coffee machine was broken, which felt personal and unnecessary. Naomi stood in the middle of the mess with her sleeves rolled up. "You should not have come here," she said. "You should not have been threatened because of me. I bill extra for threats." Funny. It was a little funny. Hands were steady, but her face was pale. I looked at the files on the floor. Did they get anything? Some copies? Nothing original. I keep originals where men like Marcus do not think to look. Where she gave me a look. Nice try. Even then, I almost smiled. Then my phone buzzed with another alert. One of my shell entities had been compromised enough to become dangerous. Not fatal. Dangerous. I had to cut it loose, transfer what I could, and let the rest That night, I sat in Naomi's damaged office and made the ugliest choice so far. I sacrificed the shell on one monitor. The entity went dark. On another, market data kept moving like it did not care that 3 years of careful hiding had just lost a layer. Naomi watched me from across the desk. "You are angry," she said. "Brilliant deduction. We're also thinking about hitting back immediately. Also brilliant. Do not. Looked at the broken room. They came after you." "Yes," she said. "And if you reveal too much because you are angry, they win more than this office." What was the problem with revenge? People sell it as fire. Most days it is accounting with a knife under the table. I paid for emergency security for Naomi. The system returned double on the expenses, because apparently even trauma had a rewards program now. I pay for backup counsel, storage, I pay for backup counsel, storage, relocation for one vulnerable contact, and digital cleanup. Each purchase made me stronger. Each purchase reminded me someone could still bleed before the final strike. The next morning, Marcus appeared on a business broadcast. He sat in a Navy suit, calm and grave. "Sterling Atlas is being targeted by anonymous financial actors," he said. "We will protect our shareholders from manipulation." Then the host asked about me. Marcus smiled faintly. "Landon is a young man with a painful history. I hope he finds peace before others use that pain for their own agenda." Pause the video. There it was again. The pat on the head, the little cat speech. Poor Landon, bitter Landon, useful Landon, small Landon, not dangerous, never dangerous. I stared at Marcus's frozen smile on the screen. "Keep thinking that," I said. They only called 2 hours later. Her voice had changed. "What did you find?" I asked. "When they tossed my office, they missed something from the development files. Victoria's team had internal audio from a farmer's saddle. I think they saved it by accident in a shared archive. Useful? Ugly?" I leaned back. "Ugly was useful." Naomi continued, "And Landon, yeah. There is a reference in the same archive to an old sealed accident review. Your parents crashed." The room went quiet, not outside, inside me. Marcus had hit the walls looking for a shadow. He had cracked one open, and behind it something old was way. Victoria Hawthorne built her public image on charity lunches, soft interviews, and that polished smile rich people use when they want poor people to feel grateful for. And Tetsugraps, one recording almost ruined all of it. Almost. The audio came from a private development meeting for the waterfront project. A group of displaced farmers had refused the first settlement offer. Their land sat near the infrastructure route Sterling Atlas wanted. They were not famous, not glamorous, not the kind of people Victoria invited to gala tables unless cameras were hungry. In the recording, a project manager warned her that the farmers were angry Victorias. I do not care if they are angry. Give them some change, smile for the local paper, and make them move. If we delay this project for every farmer with a sad story, we may as well hand the company to beggars. This lind once then again. Naomi watched me from across my apartment desk. Her office was still being repaired, so my place had become command center, legal bunker, and emotional disaster zone. She sounds exactly like she did when she slapped me, I said. Naomi did not ask about the slap. She already knew. Do you want to release it? I stared at the audio file. The smart answer was yes. The strategic answer was yes. The angry answer had already started uploading it in my head. I thought about the workers. If Sterling Atlas stock dropped too fast, employees who had nothing to do with Victoria could suffer. Projects could freeze, people could lose jobs. The farmers might become headlines for a week and still get crushed by the end. Prevenge had looked cleaner when I was sleeping beside a dumpster. From the ground, every tower looks like a desert of fall. When you get close enough to see people inside, falling becomes complicated. We release it, I said, but not alone. Legal support first, farmer group first, independent outlets, not just scandal accounts. I want pressure that helps them, not just pressure that makes Victoria sweat. Naomi nodded once. That is more expensive. Good. Limitless Bank liked expensive. We funded counsel for the farmer group through another clean path, paid for documentation, paid for independent review. Paid for a local organizer's security after Naomi warned me Marcus would not limit himself to angry emailed. The spending returned double. The guilt did not. The audio dropped on a Thursday morning. By noon, it was everywhere. Victoria Hawthorne calls farmers beggars. Sterling Atlas settlement scandal grows. Luxury resort faces protest over land pressure. Outside Sterling Atlas headquarters, people gathered with signs. Farmers and work jackets stood beside city activists, employees on lunch break, and reporters who smelled blood under perfume. One sign said sad, "Stories built your resort." Another. On the building's outer screen, Sterling Atlas had scheduled a loop of Victoria shaking hands at charity events. The protest formed under her smiling face. You could not buy that kind of symbolism. Well, technically I had funded parts of it, but still. Victoria responded within hours. She stood at a podium inside the Sterling Atlas lobby, reporters in front of her, Marcus at her side, Blake, thankfully, nowhere near a microphone. Her eyes looked wet, professional wet. I am devastated that my words were taken out of context, she said. There it was, out of context, the cousin of misunderstood, she continued. My life's work has always been service. Unfortunately, anonymous attackers are trying to damage this company and the communities we don't support. Anonymous attackers, she still did not look toward me. I stood near the back of a lobby, visible enough to be dismissed, not important enough to be feared. A small shareholder, a bitter orphan, a cat with nails. Victoria's eyes passed over me once, no recognition, not of the real kind, only annoyance. Marcus saw me too. His mouth tightened. He walked toward me after the press questions ended. You enjoy this? He asked under his breath. What? Watching decent people get smeared. I looked past him at the farmers outside. Decent people are outside holding signs. His smile vanish. You are a child playing at morality, and you are an adult losing arguments to audio files. I sharpened for half a second. I thought he might grab my collar. Then a reporter turned to camera slightly, and Marcus remembered he was supposed to be civilized. He leaned closer. You should be careful, Landon. Whoever is using you will throw you away when you stop being used. There it was again, using me. He still thought I was attached to the shadow, not casting it. Good advice, I said. I learned from family. Marcus walked away first. Small win. The stock fell again by closing. I bought more through the remaining safe routes. Not too much, not enough to show a straight line. Just steady pressure, accumulation disguised as opportunity. Who approved the settlement strategy? Why did Sterling Atlas pressure small landowners before securing all parcels? Why did the company keep blaming anonymous attackers instead of answering the recording? Questions are knives when the answer is ugly. Victoria's charity partners began pausing appearances. 2 board members requested a private review. Employees started whispering in hallways. For the first time, the Hawthorne mask did not just crack. People noticed the crack. That should have felt perfect. It did not. Late that night, I watched footage of the farmers outside the building. One older man spoke into a reporter's microphone, his hat twisted between both hands. "We just want them to stop treating us like we are already gone," he said. I paused the video. I knew that feeling too well. Naomi called Marcus is moving. She said, "How?" Is setting bait, a distressed share block. Looks like panic selling from a partner entity, but the legal attachments are ugly. If the mystery buyer touches it directly, he may expose a root. I stared at the dark screen. Marcus was not laughing anymore. Good, but he was thinking less good. "He still does not know it is me," I said. "No," Naomi replied, "but he knows something is hunting him." Looked at the black card on my desk. The silver letters caught the light. Then we make sure he keeps looking in the wrong direction. Marcus's trap was ugly because it was almost smart. That annoyed me more than it should have. The bait looked like a distressed share block tied to a partner entity that wanted out after the farmer scan. To any hungry buyer, it looked like a chance to grab influence while Sterling Atlas was bruised. To me, it looked like a stake placed under a falling. "Piano!" Naomi broke it down in plain English because she knew I hated legal fog. If the mystery buyer grabs it through the wrong route, Marcus can demand disclosure and freeze related transfers, not forever, long enough to hurt. Badly enough that we lose timing. Was everything too early, and I exposed myself before I had enough leverage? Too late, and Marcus could bury evidence, move assets. Meanwhile, Victoria went on camera again. This time, she sat in a soft chair with warm lighting and a family photo behind her. Not my family photo, of course, the Hawthorne version. Marcus, Victoria, Blake, no basement, no garbage bag, no dead parents, very clean, very fake. She folded her hands in her lap. "We have made mistakes," she said, voice trembling in the right places. "But Sterling Atlas is being attacked by hostile financial actors who do not care about our employees, our communities, or our family." The host asked about me. Victoria's face softened. "Landon is hurting. We understand that. Pain can make young people reckless. I wish he stops letting old resentment distract him from the people truly attacking this. Company?" I paused the video and stared at her face. She was not accusing me of being the attacker. That would require believing I had claws bigger than a kitten. She was making the small and public core land in Bitterland in useful little prop for hostile outsiders. The woman had thrown me out with a garbage. Dindag. The woman had thrown me out with a garbage bag and still found a way to make herself sound like the victim. That deserved applause from the abyss. Blake added his own apology video for the private jet scandal. He wore a plain shirt and looked like someone had removed all his accessories to make him seem human. I respect everyone who words hard, he said, eyes reading from a point slightly above the camera. My words did not reflect my heart. Is hard probably looked worse. The comments did not forgive him. Employees did not forgive him. Service workers definitely did not forgive him. The video became a second scandal attached to the first. That was Blake's gift. Even his apologies needed apologies. Inside Sterling Atlas, board members began asking quieter, but sharper question. They were not heroes. They were rich people smelling structural damage. But sometimes self-preservation looks enough like morality to be useful. Marcus released the bait block that afternoon. I watched the numbers move. Another investor circled it, a real rival this time not connected to me. If I let them take it, they could complicate the takeover path. If I took it too directly, Marcus would learn too much. Naomi and I argued for Ashrun minutes. She said, "Wait," I said, "the block matter." She said there would be other routes. I said Marcus had built this trap because he was getting closer to the real ones. She finally leaned back and said, "You are not thinking like a strategist right now. You are thinking like the boy outside the gate." Shut me up, not because she was wrong, because she was exactly right. My hand hovered over the keyboard. I saw Blake's Rolls Royce. Victoria's slap, Marcus's watch ticking while he kicked me out. The cold alley, the toy car in my Thalatha Asher-year-old hand. Revenge turns memory into fuel. Fuel still burns things if you spill it. I took the bait partially, not enough to expose the core, enough to stop the rival from grabbing control, enough to keep the path alive. It cost me another shell. The protective layer burned within hours. Legal notices hit. Marcus's team celebrated in private channels because they thought they had made the mystery buyer flinch. They had. That was the part that tasted bad. On the news, analysts said the anonymous attacker had deeper pockets than expected. Marcus said Sterling Atlas would identify all hostile actors. Victoria said the company welcomed transparency. I almost laughed at that one. Transparency from Victoria was like dieting at a dessert buffet. Technically possible, historically unlikely. Still, the damage was real. A few investors hesitated. A board member who had been leaning toward our side went quiet. Serena's latest segment asked whether Sterling Atlas was collapsing under external pressure or internal rot, and nobody liked either answer. Landon Sterling, meanwhile, became a convenient side character in their public story. A bitter orphan, a pawn, a sad young man resurfacing at a difficult story. Marcus still did not suspect I was the mystery buyer. He thought he had two problems, a hidden financial attacker and me, the annoying little shareholder with family baggage. He did not know he was looking at one problem from two sides that night. I went back to the public and veeing. I worked here when Elliot Sterling was alive. His kid was quiet. After the crash, we never saw him. People asked, HR told us not to. Another reply followed. Basement rumors were real? Then another, my aunt worked in the house. She said the boy cooked for them. The fake family rescue story was starting a rot from inside. Victoria had tried to make me small. Instead, people started wondering why I had been small in the first place. Naomi called close to midnight. We have enough proxy commitments nearly lined up, she said. Not clean control yet, but enough to force the board into a position Mark is cannot bully through quietly nearly. Nearly, I hated nearly, almost as much as for now. Then she added, Marcus called an emergency board meeting when... Tomorrow, of course, a trap behind a trap. Marcus wanted to cut off the mystery buyer before the proxies heard. He still thought the enemy was faceless. He still thought I was a noisy stray cat one. I looked at the black card on my desk, then at the old photo of my parent. My father had once told me that powerful men made mistakes when they believed everyone else was smaller than them. Marcus had spent years seeing me as small. Tomorrow, I would let him keep that comfort for just a little longer. Then I would take his chair apart while he said, Marcus walked into the emergency board meeting like he had already won. That was the thing about men like him. They confused volume with control. If they spoke first, louder, and in a better suit, they thought the room belonged to them. The Sterling Atlas boardroom sat on the Thalatho Arbor-honored floor, long black table, glass walls, city view. My father's company logo carved into the far wall and brushed. Steel. I entered last on purpose. Visible, small, annoying, exactly what they expected. Victoria noticed me first. She gave me a soft smile that made the back of my neck remember the basement. Landon, she said, this is not a place for personal grudges. Her, it was again. Little cat, small claws, no threat to her. I was not the storm. I was a wet footprint on the carpet. Blake sat near her scrolling on his phone, face tight from too many bad headlines and not enough consequences. He looked up when I took my seat. Still playing businessman, he muttered. Still playing apology video. I am. His eyes narrowed. A board member at the far end hid a smile behind his hand. Tiny payoff, I accepted it. Marcus stood at the head of the table and started strong. He blamed hostile actors. He blamed medium manipulation. He blamed activists. He blamed anonymous speculators who wanted to damage an American company for prof. He did not blame me, not even close. When he looked at me, it was with the same expression he used for a stain on a cuff, irritating, maybe embarrassing, but not dangerous. And unfortunately, Marcus said, turning toward the board, minor distractions have allowed these outside forces to muddy the conversation. Ice moved to me. Minor distraction. I looked down at my pen. If I smiled too early, I would ruin the meet. Mark has continued. We need emergency authority to freeze questionable proxy activity, review hostile accumulation. Its team passed out folders, thick folders, expensive folders, the kind designed to make weak arguments feel heavier. Victoria looked at me with fake sadness. Landon, you should leave before you embarrass yourself. You have already. Enough. Suffered enough. That was cute. She said it like suffering was weather, not a family project she personally supervised. That a family project she personally supervised. I finally looked up. You mean before I talk about the basement again? Director near the windows shifted in his chair. Victoria's eyes hardened for a blink. Then the soft look returned. You were troubled. We did our best. Phone buzzed on the table. Then another. Then three more. The first packet had arrived. Naomi's timing was rude and beautiful. Board members opened secure files on their tablets. One after another, their expressions changed. Not shock, not yet. Attention, that was better. Marcus noticed the shift. What is this? He demanded. A director named Paul Harrington adjusted his frown from whom Paul scrolled multiple entity. Marcus's smile returned sharp and triumphant. Exactly, hidden entities. This proves my point. We are being attacked by outside money. Not me, he was staring at the smoke and insulting the match in my hand. Then Serena's broadcast went live on several phones at once. Nobody had planned to watch it in the boardroom. Everyone did it anyway. Her face appeared on one director's screen, calm and bright. New documents reviewed by independent counsel raised questions about Sterling Atlas governance, land acquisition pressure, and media influence connected to Hawthorne-controlled leadership. Marcus slapped his hand on the table. But off. Nobody did that was the first real crack. People who obey you do not always announce when they stop. Sometimes they just leave the screen on. Naomi's second packet landed. This one was cleaner. Old trust amendments, transfer trails, proxy commitments, debt positions. Nothing that explained everything to the audience in one boring lump enough to make the board understand one thing. Marcus and Victoria were not protecting Sterling Atlas. They were protecting themselves. I watched Marcus process the room, the lowered eyes, the directors checking pages without asking him for permission. The general counsel whispering to an assistant, Victoria's hand resting too still on the table. Blake finally stopped scrolling. "What is happening?" he whispered. No one answered him. That was new for Blake. Marcus pointed at the packet on Paul's tablet. "I want the name behind these entities." Gay swept the room, skipped over me like I was furniture, then landed on the legal team. Now that was how little he suspected me. I was sitting 10 feet away from him holding a pen, breathing calmly, and he still believed the tiger was somewhere outside the fake building. Victoria tried to regain the room with a softer blade. "We are being targeted," she said. "This company cannot allow anonymous cowards to hide behind paperwork and emotional distractions." A vote was called. Marcus objected loud. The general counsel advised continuing. Quietly, quiet one. The emergency authority Marcus wanted did not pass. Instead, the board approved an independent review and temporary restrictions on several Hawthorne-controlled actions. Enough to slow Marcus, enough to stop Victoria from moving certain files, enough to make my hidden positions impossible to sweep away before the next step. Marcus lost control of the room he had entered like a king. He stood there, breathing hard through his nose, while directors avoided his eyes. Victoria tried one last soft line. "We should speak privately as a family." I stood. "We were private for 4 years. I slept in your basement." The room went still again. Blake looked at his mother. For the first time, he looked less bored and more afraid. I picked up my folder and walked toward the door. Marcus followed. His footsteps hit hard behind me. "Landon," he barked. I kept walking. The executive floor outside the boardroom was glass, steel, and silence. Employees at nearby desks looked up. Assistants froze with tablets in their tagged hands. Marcus caught up near the CEO office entrance. Victoria followed. Faster than her heels liked. Blake came after her, phone already buzzing in his hand. Marcus stepped in front of me. "What that look off your face," he said. "You do not even understand what just happened." I looked at him. The market screens behind the reception wall flashed red. My phone vibrated once. Naomi's message appeared. "Audit team and elevator." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. For 4 years, they had asked me questions like I was supposed to lower my head. Who broke the vase? Why are you ungrateful? Who let you upstairs? Why are you still here? And now Marcus was snarling at the room, at the board, at the legal team, at ghosts he could not see. "I will find the villain behind this," he said. He was not asking me. That was the funniest part. He still thought I was background noise. I smiled. And for the first time, I decided to answer anyway. Marcus said he would find the villain behind everything. Marcus said he would find the villain behind everything, so I saved him the search fee. "It was me," I said. For a second, nobody moved. The executive floor was too bright, too clean, too full of people pretending not to listen. Systems stood frozen beside glass desks. A security guard paused near the elevator. 2 board aides stopped halfway through a doorway. Behind Marcus, the market screens kept flashing red like the building itself had a pulse. Victoria stared at me. Marcus stared harder. Blake looked between all of us with his phone pressed to his ear, finally quiet for reasons that did not involve personal growth. Marcus laughed once, not because it was funny, because his brain needed a sound while it rejected the truth. "You," he said. I nodded. "Me." His face twisted. "The bitter, the Ferrari." "Mine." Blake's mouth opened. No words came out. That alone was worth several million. Victoria took one step forward. The land? Ethnan. Marcus's jaw tightened. The proxy entities? Most of them. The leaks. Face changed then. Not fully. Victoria had trained her expressions for decades. But the public softness vanished from her eyes. What remained was the woman who had slapped me at Arba Asher and called me destructive while Blake laughed behind. Her. You little snake, she whispered. There she was. No charity lights, no soft interview chair, no tragic aunt voice, just Victoria. Marcus stepped closer. You expect me to believe a basement brat built all this? I smiled. No, I expected you not to. That was the useful part. You employees looked at each other. The guard knew the elevator lowered his hand from his radio. Marcus pointed at me, finger shaking now. You had backing. I had a black card 3 years, and your arrogance doing half the labor. That was not the whole truth. Nobody needed the system details. Limitless Bank belonged to me, and some miracles should not be explained to thieves. But the money trail, the entities, the purchases, the pressure point. I pulled one folded page from my jacket and held it up. Not a speech, not a lecture, just a list. Ferrari acquisition entity, waterfront parcel entity, proxy vote route media, evidence chain debt, position audit trigger, media evidence chain debt. Position. Each line pointed to something they had blamed on someone else. Each line pointed back to me. Arches grabbed for the paper. I pulled it back. Careful, I said. You already lost one office today. Do not lose your temper in front of witnesses. As flicked sideways, that was when he noticed the employees, the assistants, the board aides, the lawyer stepping out of the elevator with 2 auditors behind. Him. Naomi was not with them. She had insisted on staying off-site until the audit entry was secure. Smart, annoying, alive. The lead auditor walked toward us with a folder under his arm. Mr. Marcus Hawthorne? Marcus did not answer. The auditor continued anyway. We have formal notice of review concerning Sterling Family Trust transfers, related party media expenditures, and development settlement conduct. Victoria's face went. Laughed. I almost did. Not because it was funny, because some justice arrives wearing a very small hat. Marcus turned on me. You froze his accounts? No, I said. The board froze questionable discretionary access tied to restricted company channels. Stared, I shrugged. Translation, Blake's stolen allowance. Ball. Blake looked like someone had told him Oxygen was now subscription-based. You can't do this, he snapped. I looked at him for a second. I saw him at Arbata Asher, laughing behind Victoria after the vase shattered. I saw him at Thamania Asher leaning against the Rolls-Royce while I held the garbage bag. I saw him on the private jet telling a flight attendant to be grateful for visibility. I did not do it. I said you did. I just stopped paying. Curtain, Victoria's voice sharpened. You ungrateful boy. That word again. Ungrateful. It followed me from the basement to the boardroom like a bad smell. For what? For what? I asked. The basement, the slap, the garbage bag, the years you spent wearing my parents' company like a stolen coat. Hand lifted slightly, not much enough that Marcus noticed, enough that I noticed, enough that the employees noticed. The last time Victoria's hand rose like that, I was Arbada Asher, and there was broken glass on the floor. This time, I did not move back. Try it, I said quietly. The floor went silent. Victoria's hand lowered. That was another small victory. Some victories look like applause. Some look like a person finally realizing they cannot hate you anymore. Marcus took a breath through his teeth. You think this makes you powerful? No, I said. You made me powerless. I had to learn the difference. The auditors moved past us toward the CEO office. Of Marcus's assistants stepped aside without being told. Marcus sighed, his face darkened. There it was, loss of obedience, not dramatic, not loud, devastating. Victoria. I looked at her pearl earrings, her perfect hair, her trembling smile. For years, family had meant orders to a basement door. Now, family meant damage control. No, I said. I was family when you had power over me now. I am a shareholder, a creditor, and the son of the people you robbed. Ice flashed. You have no idea what your parents left behind. That sentence was different, not a denial, a slip. Mark is turned toward her. Victoria, too late. I heard it. The auditor heard it. One board aide definitely heard it because his head lifted fast enough to hurt. Naomi sealed accident file thread, pressed into my mind like a finger on a bruise. What did they leave behind? I asked. Victoria's mouth closed. Marcus stepped in. This conversation is over. No, I said. This part is over. Look toward the elevator. The audit team had entered the CEO office. Employees were still watching. Phones were not lifted. Good. Let them witness the mask on the floor. I turned back to Marcus. For 3 years, you chased a mystery bidder, a hostile fund, a media enemy, a speculator. You blamed everyone except the kid. Wait. Marcus's hands curled at his sides. Victoria looked like she wanted the floor to open. Blake whispered into his phone, "I'll call you back," then ended the call without waiting. I stepped closer, just enough that Marcus had to look slightly down at me and still could not make me feel small. "The Ferrari was for my birthday," I said. "The land was for the basement. The farmer tape was for every person you thought would shut up because you paid them less than respect. Shares were for my father. The proxies were for my mother. And this." I looked around the executive floor, the red screens, the frozen employees, the auditors inside the office, the thieves finally cornered in the company. They stole power. "This is for the garbage bag." No one spoke. For once, not even Blake. Marcus's face turned red. "You will regret humiliating us." I smiled. That. Not peace, not forgiveness, not a soft family hug in a room full of lawyers. Just Mark is furious. Victoria exposed, Blake panicking, and me standing where my father should have stood, no longer outside the gate. "Happy birthday to me," I said. The elevator door is opened again behind us. Another legal team stepped out with sealed folder. On the top folder, I saw the label Naomi had warned me about Sterling Accident Review. Victoria saw to her face changed. In a way I had never seen before. Fear. Real fear. Not of losing a deal, not of losing a headline, of the past opening its mouth. I kept my smile. The company floor reveal had landed, but the war for Sterling Atlas was not over. The forged will, the bribed media network, the dirty development scheme, and my parents' sealed accident file were all waiting behind the next door. Victoria and Marcus stood in front of me, furious and trapped. I stood in front of them, smirking, and that was where I let the silence cut.